and welcome to another episode with the Conspiracy Chicks. Julie and I have a lot to tell you, so let's get cracking.
Oh, 100% Ash. This show is absolutely buzzing. So yeah, you're right, we better get a move on.
Some of the topics we're going to cover in this episode include the disappearance of 17 Afghan soldiers from a United States base and how undercover officers got busted for posing as protesters during the G-20 summit in an effort to incite violence.
Top stuff, so hang in there with us and enjoy the show. It seems the Gulf oil spill is still making the headlines. Yes, I know you're all getting pretty tired of it. But sometimes you just come across something that makes you sit up and take notice. And a thread on abovetopsecret.com did just that, called Warning to Gulf Volunteers. Almost every cleanup worker from the 1989 Valdez disaster is now dead. The thread was started by the member Monkey See, Monkey Do. It's generated 76 flags and over 30 stars, making it on the hot list this week. It seems an expert has come forward warning of the dangers of volunteering in such a disaster, stating that the average life expectancy for those who were present in the 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster was 51 years of age. Deepwater Horizon is a much larger spill, so definitely a concern. Already there are reports of workers coming down with flu-like symptoms, and a local Pensacola news source even stated that 400 people had gone to their doctors with symptoms such as upper or lower respiratory problems. Other symptoms include headaches and nausea after trips to beaches in surrounding areas. Well, let's look at what the ATS members have to say. The member Ice Happy asked if this was the reason that BP won't let their workers wear respirators in order to cover up their sins in the future, or to prevent them from suing them in the future. A pretty harsh claim, but is there some truth to it? I'm in awe that people who take time to volunteer are put at an unknown risk, and I'm sure for those who are already helping, this piece of news comes as somewhat as a shock. I know I would be getting worried if I had just read this article. But is this article just propaganda in order to scare people into not helping with the spill? Many say that no proper study was done on the people that worked on the 1989 spill, which would then throw this completely out the window. It was 20 years ago. Many things have changed since then. Should we even make a comparison? Is it even dangerous to? Even if this article is correct, it may bear no resemblance on the Gulf oil disaster. The truth is, people are getting sick, and only time will tell if this is due to the oil or to other instances like the hot weather that has been affecting the areas lately.
During the June G20 summit held in Toronto, undercover police provocateurs were busted for posing as regular protesters. ATS member History is Only His Story brings us the video footage with his topic, a G20 video you might not have seen. What essentially went down is that undercover agents operating under the guise of being regular protesters engaged in acts of vandalism and inciting others to violence. Other related images submitted by member T-Shades depict the protesters crashing store windows, damaging police cars, and setting fires. In the footage, you can clearly see the undercover plainclothes officers retreating behind a police line for protection after their identity is exposed. Another imposter shown being apprehended by the police is wearing the exact same kind of boots the uniformed officers who are detaining him are wearing. It was such an obvious inside job that the Quebec provincial police were forced to admit that they did in fact place undercover agents among the crowds in an attempt to incite violence. This is an example of a psychological operation, and this ultimately comes down to an attempt to trivialize at best and demonize at worst the act of public protest. One thing is for sure, the admission left citizens appalled at the injustice and hypocrisy of the police force's actions.
A man of Russian descent by the name of Brian Alexic was arrested in LA. What makes this story different from almost every other story is that his life bears a striking resemblance to that of the movie personality Jason Bourne, according to many in the media. Police were called due to the smell of gas coming from his apartment. But what they found was far more interesting. They entered through a barricaded front door to find a stockpile of weapons, counterfeiting equipment, high-powered binoculars, placed in a position looking at the US Federal Reserve building next door. And more oddly, a mosaic with a CIA seal on it, as well as a framed portrait of Hugo Chavez. All of this, as well as drugs including methamphetamine. He escaped down a fire escape, which led to a 6-week hunt for this international man of mystery, who is now in the hands of authorities. So, who is he, and what has he been up to? He's not talking, that's for sure, but police know that he did use other personalities. A story spun out of control? Could this be a false flag in order to tighten up security? Police state. Now people are starting to connect their own dots. Was this the work of one man, a small group, or something much larger? Could there even be a connection with the attempted NYC bomber, both men hailed from the East Coast in Jersey? Others say that he could be working for the CIA, though I think it would be a bit obvious to have a big old mosaic there. Others point the finger more towards foreign mob, terrorist groups or foreign spies. So what's the bigger picture here? Clues that may be found in the 4 hard drives that have been recovered since he was arrested. But something tells me this will get swept under the carpet as quick as it appeared. It has ATS members in a spin, that's for sure. In a thread entitled CIA Operative Caught Red-Handed by the Member Airspoon. This screams intelligence service of some sort, whether it just looks like it or really is, he says. Though others strongly disagree and believe this is really nothing and he's a criminal or just mentally unstable. With so many twists and turns within this story, it almost leaves it open to our own imaginations and interpretations. Only when this man begins to speak or those files are made public will we know if this was just an interesting story or one that has a much deeper agenda. But news has come in on a similar note saying that the US Justice Department announced that 10 individuals were arrested for allegedly spying in the USA on behalf of the Russian Federation. Maybe we may just find out that connection quicker than we think.
Some good news comes our way with the topic brought to us by ATS member Raging Panda. Think the feds are taking your guns? Think again. Where the United States Supreme Court deemed the Chicago, Illinois handgun ban unconstitutional and in conflict with the Second Amendment. They definitely stayed true to their landmark decision of 2 years ago, the District of Columbia versus Heller, and its interpretation of the Second Amendment, where they confirmed the individual's right to possess a firearms without it being associated with militia service. This was in opposition to gun control advocates who interpreted the Second Amendment as only guaranteeing the right to own guns if it was relevant to militia service. Well, fast forward to 2010, where we find ourselves in a similar situation in Chicago, where for the past 28 years, private residents were prohibited from owning handguns. The Supreme Court reinforced their previous decision in a 5-4 vote that citizens do in fact have the right to keep and bear arms, and that our rights in the nation's constitution cannot be undermined by community-imposed bans. As it stands now, gun rights supporters see this as a victory, but members like Way Out There Dude bring up a great warning that the victory may only be temporary due to the closeness of the 5-4 vote. and that it could only be a matter of time for the Supreme Court majority to shift tides via future nominees who won't judge so favorably for the people or for our rights guaranteed to us in the Constitution.
Big beef, big cattle is nothing compared to big oil. A program that is set up to preserve horses basically has ended up systematically eliminating them.
I'm going to touch on a topic on the recent release of information that an alert was issued for 17 Afghan military members who went AWOL from a US Air Force base in Texas. The men were training to be pilots and have security badges that give them access to US defense installations. What's a little odd here is the timing on releasing this information. These men have not just gone missing. The truth is that these 17 men have gone missing over the past 2 years. Are they releasing this because they fear something will happen, like a terror attack? Or is this some false flag in order to cause fear and panic? I'm in a kind of twist. I've heard Operation Blackjack thrown around quite a bit lately. Is this the beginning of something soon to come? I'm still not sure on the whole purpose of Operation Blackjack. Many shout hoax, but it makes me wonder why this would have been placed in the hands of the media. Is this a way of making people not take notice or to rubbish the idea of a false flag? Think about it. You throw out some dates, you chuck out some clues that lead you to a date of something happening. The date comes and goes and you're left thinking, oh well, where originally you sat there with your eyes glued searching for the clues. However, as the time passes, it makes you less likely to be so caught up next time. You start not to look for those clues anymore. A clever tactic. But drifting back to the topic and checking out the thread, alert issued for 17 Afghan military by the member Vicello, maybe got that wrong, a BEF top secret member in Nothing We Trust states his thoughts on the whole matter, saying, "This whole story sounds like a propaganda and disinformation being pushed by the US government for who knows what purpose. It's really a non-issue, which I think makes me wonder why the focus was on this alert." The member, Illusions Are Grander, makes a very interesting point that kind of sums up my thoughts on this too. He says, "I think people are yelling false flag because this is obviously such a non-issue that there really is no point in breaking the story, unless you were trying to get some specific response from people." Which then sort of begs the question, why are they yanking our chain, and which way are they trying to keep us from looking? Is he right? It seems like many ATS members do share his opinion on this. Many don't quite get the whole purpose of the released story and generally feel that it's a little bit fishy. I'm guessing only time will tell. So stay safe everyone and keep your eyes and your mind open.
Well, here we go again. What would a conspiracy show be without the discussion of vaccines? Let's take a look at a thread by ATS member Highly Original. U.S. government panel now pushing vaccinations for all. After the swine flu and vaccination chaos of 2009, it looks like they're at it once more, only this year they plan to be a couple of steps ahead with the intention to push seasonal flu vaccines earlier than usual and to a wider base, which makes up 85% of the population. ATS member Payment asserts that with the recent healthcare reform, the government now has a larger interest in keeping us healthy. Member TJAC later adds that their belief that this is an example of pharmaceutical companies expanding their influence over Washington. Another suspicion is that in the past there generally has been no widespread campaign for universal seasonal flu vaccinations, as in really pushing the population to get vaccinated on a massive scale for the seasonal flu. However, this year, things are shaping up a bit differently, and something that's not due to concerns for our health. You see, every year, millions of vaccine doses remain unused and have to be discarded. Therefore, some conspiracy theorists speculate that this is nothing more than a way to push more vaccines for more profits instead of having millions of unused doses. Whatever the case may be, the old conspiracy slogan rings true: follow the money.
Skimming through the boards on abovetopsecret.com, I came across an interesting article called "Choosing Healthy Foods Now Called a Mental Disorder" by the member Modern Acamedia. This thread has over 65 flags and over 40 stars and was in the top list this week. It states that allegedly the psychiatric industry are pushing for a condition called a healthy eating disorder for those who focus too much on eating healthy food. So eating healthy food can apparently have you classed with a mental disorder? Huh? Well, I may as well go and take my meds now. It seems that they believe that focusing on a healthy food is just as much as an issue as focusing on junk food. The proper name for this is orthorexia nervosa, meaning nervous of eating the correct food in Latin. People suffering this condition are believed to, in general, not like to touch sugar or foods that contain pesticides, herbicides, or contain artificial additives. I don't blame them. In this day and age, it seems like pretty much everything is bad for you. The ATS member Live Free or Die 306 says on the matter, "I completely understand where this uproar is coming from, but must add a bit from my own experiences. Healthy eating is obviously incredibly important, but the anxiety of doing so can create mental strife in people who are prone to obsessive compulsive and or self-harming behaviours." I get the point, and on that level I do agree, but I fear name giving or stereotyping is a dangerous game. But come on, are they just trying to make a mountain out of a molehill? Surely eating foods that don't contain all the crap is better for us than anything else out there. I'm surprised they have no name for junk food yet. Junk food itis, perhaps? So what's the conspiracy here? Are they pushing us to eat the stuff that does contain chemicals, with their genetically mutilated crops containing all sorts? It brings up another theory where people believe that they really are trying to poison our food for a bigger purpose. The general feel is that this is pretty ridiculous, though others feel that focusing too much on anything is bad for you. Now, I do agree there's always an extreme, but let's hope the psychiatric industry don't push this one to the extreme. Someone pass the broccoli?
The topic by ATS member Ignorance Isn't Bliss, entitled "Obama's Identity Ecosystem Will Tie Our Names to Every Device We Use and Replace All Passwords," brings to our attention the plan to implement a system of associating netizens to their actual identity. Or in other words, on June 25th, 2010, the Obama administration released what is known as the Draft National Strategy, which entails replacing individual logins and passwords with one all-encompassing authentication that connects that person's real identity to online activity, such as banking, social networks, forums, and emails. This also includes mobile devices, USB drives, smart cards, and other various electronics and software. Now, of course, we're being told this is for our own protection. You know, you'd really think the line "for security purposes" would be a worn out excuse by now after legislation like the Patriot Act. But the government is indeed still on the shtick. Hey, they'll go for it if we tell them this is for their own protection. So here we are yet again at the expansion of Big Brother keeping an ever watchful eye over the citizens under the guise of safety, and convenience.